You are joining us for another in our occasional series of interviews with property investors and developers to talk about their plans for 2021. And joining me today is a property investor, developer, author, entrepreneur, Nicholas Wallwork. So Nick, lovely to see you and Happy New Year to you. Today we were going to have a look at your kind of four chosen strategies for 2021. But before we go there, perhaps I think it would be a good idea just to get a flavour of your property life, because you wear a lot of different hats, don't you? But they're all very synergistic towards each other.
Yeah, I guess I'd summarise it by saying I'm extremely passionate about property. I've been, I guess, in property, investing in my first house, which I lived in to start with. I bought it as a home, but converted it into an HMO. That was back in 2000. So I guess I've been investing since 2000, and full time without any other jobs or commitments, probably from about 2006, I think it was, 6, 7, that kind of time. So I sort of built up a portfolio slowly, went to some courses and seminars, did a lot of reading. I'm very passionate about education, as you know, and I picked up all the low-hanging fruit, and I'm talking about reading every entrepreneur's book in the world about, how to become successful and what you have to do. And so, those kind of fundamentals, I guess, taught me about passive income and building a power team and all the fundamentals that a lot of us, understand in property. It's the same throughout, all industries and all different businesses. So, it took me a little while to get going, and I kind of wish I'd known what I know now, but that's life, isn't it? You don't have the beauty of hindsight, and you don't have the beauty of the people you know now and the contacts you have now and the knowledge and all that sort of stuff. And I guess my main role now is property development. My biggest business, I guess, is developing properties through the Red Brick brand, who you can see picking up on screen. We are conversion experts mainly. We don't do a lot of new build. So it's OfficeResidential Conversions, care to resi, all this kind of stuff we've done over the years. We've done some service accommodation. We've got good experience with that. I've done a few rent to rents early in my career, so I understand that and can advise on that and know the ups and downs, all these different strategies that people are using still today. I was investing in HMOs in 2000. And they were bedsits, years and years beyond. It's not a new idea, but what it is at the moment is it's obviously HMOs and things like that very, very popular because there is the demand for it, and it is hard to get on the housing ladder. So yeah, to answer your question without waffling on for hours now, mainly property developer. I also run Property Forum, a friend of Property Tribes, where we put on good information, ebooks, trying to help educate people freely or very cheaply. And I'm very proud more recently to have written my books. So I've got I've partnered with the For Dummies brand, the global For Dummies brand. I'm looking on a mirror on my webcam, so I don't know which part of the book I'm touching. That bit. But the global For Dummies brand. I'm really proud of that because there's not many people that are able to break out of our little niche and get stuff published and get stuff out to the mass market. And I'm very proud to have been able to do that. And there's lots of great information in there. Everything from the basic strategies, the rental strategies, the management strategies, right through to property developing.
What you've demonstrated is that you subscribe to multiple streams of income, so you're not just relying on one stream of income. You've got several streams, and I did want to pick up on we can see that you've got your own property forum in the background there on your branding, and you're, as you said, friend of Property Tribes, and likewise, and you're very much of our thought processes that people should have access to free information to learn and grow, and you're part of the Property Summits 5 who put on regular events and so on. And I think one of the things that this kind of approach achieves is it helps you demonstrate your domain expertise, and then that kind of feeds into everything you're doing, because one of the other things that you do is mentoring as well. And as people get to know you through all of these different resources that you provide, it helps them to understand your level of knowledge and where they can work with you, doesn't it?
it's not a new topic, property education. It's not a new topic, education in any industry. And there's plenty of industries that have bad educators that should be avoided, or people that are just selling courses without, huge amount of experience. So I kind of felt, I wanted to help people further. We've done Property Forum for a number of years. I've always provided good information and content through my businesses. So this was really taking it one step further and seeing a gap in the market where people have probably gone on these courses, realized, there's a load of theory there. That's great. But how do I actually get going? Who do I speak to? Who do I use for my power team? How do I physically start doing this? It's very hard to teach that on a course. I don't teach people property. I don't want to really talk to absolute newbies. I'm happy to chat to anyone, but I don't think my mentoring would have the biggest impact on people unless they've gone through a fair bit of training already and they pick the low-hanging fruit. They understand a number of the strategies. They've done a lot of reading. Not just my book, lots of other books. John Howard's got some good books out. Lots of people in the industry. Paul Mahoney, also both his chaps on property summits. When I started out, I've read everyone's book, absolutely everyone's, good, bad, ugly, and I've made up my own views as to what I started to formulate my own views as to who was honest, who wasn't, who genuinely was doing what they said they were doing. And I was picking the tidbits. So from each book, I picked nuggets. And, when I read John's book, I picked up some nuggets of information that I didn't know or wasn't as good at. So, no one person, knows it all. And if you're that kind of arrogant person that thinks you know it all, you really shouldn't be in business. You shouldn't be teaching others, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that kind of that's very much subscribes along to our mantra that none of us is as smart as all of us, and that there's a huge hive mind of knowledge to tap into there. If we move on now to your 4 top strategies for 2021, I was wondering, did you sit down at the end of last year or the beginning of this year and sort of review where you were and then think about what might happen with the market in 2021 and kind of formulate a plan? Because I guess I'm asking, are you going to be doing anything differently this year to what you've been doing previously?
Yeah, good question. And the answer is yes, we are. Most importantly, we did sit down. I sat down with my main business partner in Red Brick, and we've discussed strategy. I think it's not an overnight decision, this kind of stuff. It's very much market dependent. We're in an industry that changes regularly, both through regulation and trends even. I think we see like serviced accommodation has been really hot for a couple of years. Not sure it will be after COVID. Certainly be a lot harder and people to realise how challenging that strategy can be. And so, various things come and go, but ultimately we're going to be doing more of the same. I think there's more stock out there than there will have been for the last year or two, certainly for development, and certainly for the conversion space, which I'm in, and my strategies are largely based around my own expertise, as you might expect. But I think there'll be more opportunity, and we want to do more sites because I think there will be more. My personal opinions, there's going to be, and this is kind of unfortunate, unfortunate for the businesses and offices that are going to be, losing money or going bust. I think there's going to be a lot of stock for those reasons in various areas, and thus bricks and mortar buildings will be available for repurposing. And my job as a developer, I see, is providing a quality end product with the affordable quality accommodation at the end, not to be misconstrued with affordable housing, which is what developers give a percentage away to the council. Sure. I just want to provide affordable accommodation and a good quality. So, there's plenty of opportunity to recycle in this time. And that's the silver lining in the cloud, really, is that there should be an opportunity to recycle unwanted properties and ultimately save carbon footprints and all that, because I think conversion is often a lot cheaper and less intrusive to the surrounding areas, to neighbours, to the environment than anything else. So that's an element of what we do. We bear all that in mind, but more of the same, really. And if anything, trying to gear up a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Awesome stuff. Let's go to your first strategy for 2021 then. What is it and why have you chosen it?
Well, it's the good old office to residential conversion. It's not a particularly new strategy. I'm sure people have seen it about. It's what I've been doing for, 12, 13 years when we've been full-time developers. But I think, based on what I've just been saying, really, and it leads on nicely to that, is there's going to be a lot of office stock coming up. The office to residential market has been pretty tough in the last year. It's got tough because that stock's dried up. All the older offices, the things that weren't grade A quality at an affordable price, which is what people could rent if they were a company, all the older stuff that was a bit, getting a bit manky or needed a refit, that's all been gobbled up and developed. And then, you chuck in stuff like the space standards that have come in. They're bringing now the office to residential schemes are going to have to adhere to the national space standards, which is, I think, 37 square meters for a studio one bed, which, my view is utterly ridiculous. It'll rule out converting a lot of stock because it won't be viable. Now, I do agree with a space standard. I think there should be a space standard. I wholeheartedly support good regulation, but I support good thought out regulation that has the purpose that it's intended for. I totally support that regulation, but I think it just needs to be a sensible regulation. Bringing in something like a 20 square meter rule would be reasonable for me in my mind in a micro studio. And when you see some of the micro studio schemes we've done, they're very high end. You wouldn't, if I told you this is a micro studio, you'd just think it was a studio. Well space designed, very high spec. It feels like a high end hotel suite. A small hotel suite. And that's the point. Is I think it's unnecessary regulation. So there's been a lot of pressure on that industry. I'm hoping that's going to be my new number one strategy, and probably lots of other people's, that there will be some more stock coming to the market in that respect, people working from home, all the rest of it. So it's a new idea for 2021, but it's a new old idea.
Got it. So if we go to your number 2 strategy.
Yes. So number two, we have retail to resi. So again, I'm talking from a conversion expert point of view. And, to be fair, conversions are, in my mind, mostly lower risk. You don't have to break ground often. You don't have contamination risks in the ground. You don't have major service risks, potentially, as long as you do some appropriate surveys before you exchange on deals. They should have electrics. They should have water. Yes, they might need to be upgraded, but they're usually in good location, town centre locations, these offices and certainly retail to resi on this particular point. So they represent, in my mind, a fairly low risk opportunity to get into property development. And you can pick up a retail unit for, depending on where you are in the country. If I'm talking the southeast of England, as little as a couple of £100,000. And you can knock a flat upstairs and a couple of flats out the back. And maybe half the ground floor retail space, and then you keep a smaller frontage, you're shrinking the size, and that will probably be very well received by the council. And there are obviously PD rules now under the Class E, permitted development, etc., and that's all changing again next year. So, I don't want to go into too much detail on the specific rules. Suffice to say that there are some very relaxed PD rules that are coming in force at the moment to support those kind of conversions. And I think those will create a lot of stock. So, and obviously with the COVID situation, there'll be a number of businesses bankrupt. I think I read a newspaper article in Berkshire the other day listing the shops that had shut down. It was either Reading or Maidenhead, one of the Thames Valley corridor towns. Might have been Basingstoke, actually, just like listing the companies and the shops that had gone bust already. That was shocking reading. It was really sad reading. But out of that silver lining, someone's going to use these shops for something. If they're not in a dedicated mall, the stuff on the high street fringes, I think they're the ones that will be kind of ripe for a residential. Where let's take Basingstoke as an example. For anyone that doesn't know that, you've got a Festival Place shopping centre, brand new shopping centre that was boshed up. I'm going to guess 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So new shopping centre. And the older high streets are going to be the ones that suffer most, because it's not all under one roof, out the rain, and well presented and kept to a grade A quality. So, that would be my next strategy. And I think it's attainable for people wanting to get into property.
I think that was the interesting point that I wanted to pick up on, that some people have, built their portfolios as you did in the early days, just, standard buy to let, and they want to make that jump to something a bit more adventurous. And from what you've said, that does sound like a relatively low risk way to do so, and to find your way into property development. Interested to know, Nick, do you do complete buy to sell, or will you keep some of the units? What would be your outcome for those?
For us, we keep about 80% of what we do. So we're more build to let or build to rent developers than anything else. So we do try and keep stuff. You know, I still firmly believe in the long-term fundamentals of property and capital growth. I don't invest for that mind. I strictly invest for yield, for rental income. You know, it has to, once you've refinanced at the end of a deal and you're on your main commercial mortgage, it must more than wipe its face. It must make some good rental income, good profit from the site. And then the capital growth can come, and you can hope it can come. If it doesn't, it doesn't matter. You know, what happens when, you know, you have a recession or you know, a thing like COVID even, people tend to put off house moves. If they were looking, they might stop. And actually then you get this kind of pent up demand where those people are already renting. So, you know, if you've got stock, it tends to do quite well in market downturns. So regardless, if you can forget about the value of your properties might have dipped by X amount, in these kind of markets, the rentals often do really well. Depends on the strategy. This is not a generalized sweeping statement. You know, I'm talking more about the sort of young professional market, the standard typical vanilla rentals. What we've seen in this pandemic, weirdly, is strong house price growth as well. So it's been, you would never have predicted it.
Nobody knows how long it's going to last, though. There's so much talk of, you know, it falling off a cliff on the 31st of March when the stamp duty holiday ends. And I think this really, you know, it really highlights how buy and hold and taking a long-term view is very sensible in these very turbulent market conditions. Moving on to number 3, I think you've got an interest now in care homes. Is that something new for you?
We've done a couple of conversions, but it's definitely a strategy that I'm looking at this year. I viewed one just a couple of days ago, shut down. And again, sadly, as a business model, I think people will be consolidating care homes. If they've got more than one in a location, they might be losing one or two. I do believe that's a short-term issue. You know, so it's not an opportunity that's going to last a long time. It is a COVID issue, but they are always very popular. They've always been a viable strategy, and it's not one that people talk about very much. So that's why I've chucked it in my top 4 strategies, because it is something people should be aware of. That they go reasonably cheap. They go for quite a good price because the commercial agents that are selling them don't really understand the residential market and just are selling on a disused vacant care home. The reason they often come for sale is not because maybe the business is struggling for, you know, obvious COVID related reasons, but you know, there are these brand new care homes that get built by new build developers. So they're purpose built. They're built with all the bells and whistles, all the regulation, all the spec, bigger sizes, integrated en suites, you know, built to a much higher specification. And similar to the office market, where you've got the grade A offices doing well and we've been recycling all the old stock, there's a very similar thing happening in the care home industry for the last few years, and that's only going to continue. So again, in the positive sort of way of recycling property, care homes, I think, represent a good opportunity that you might not initially look for. So seeking out the right people that operate in that field, well worth doing.
Yeah, I think also those buildings, they tend to come with, you know, large garden spaces and good parking areas and things like that. So they do actually lend themselves to being converted, don't they?
They really do. We're offering on one. We've offered on one already. I can't say where it is, unfortunately, because it might be too easy to find. But yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be a sort of it's about 50 odd rooms it's convertible to. So we'll probably convert that into flats, and there's lots of, it's kind of like imagine a row of new build. It looks like new build, actually, really good quality. Terraced houses, we might chop it up into small houses. So yeah, who knows? That one, hopefully we'll get the offer accepted. If we do, if we can strike a deal there, that'll be one we're doing this year as well. Now, I must stress, it's a bit more challenging than office to residential, or office to retail to residential, because you will need a planning application. unless they do bring in new PD rules around it. At the moment, it's still under this kind of planning stage. So, either offer subject to planning, or if you're, not able to do that and you're prepared, you're a higher risk profile person, and you're prepared to take a bit more risk, maybe get a pre-app inquiry from the council. That's where you kind of book a meeting with the council, you show them some very basic floor plans and an outline of what you want to do, and your architect or planning consultant could draw that up for you, and get a view from the council. And they usually have to commit to getting back to you within 28 days. So usually within a couple of weeks, they'll, oh, crikey, we've got to get on this. They'll call you up, book a meeting on site. You can show them around, talk through your plans. Best to have your architect or planning consultant there. And you'll get their gut feeling on site, is this going to be acceptable to convert it back to residential? And one of the challenges is losing care home bed spaces. If that particular borough doesn't have many beds, they'll be reluctant to let it go, and it could be very, very high risk. We've had pre-apps in the past on sites, not necessarily care homes, where the council have said, I'm basically going to do, and this was their words, I kid you not, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that you cannot convert this to residential.
Wow.
That was the almost verbatim. So a pre-app inquiry is really important. Don't just buy something with zero input from the council. The councils are busy, it's tough, but you can really get yourself in a whole heap of problems there. I mean, sure, you can sell the site on again, but by the time you've done fees and costs, you're going to be in for tens and tens of thousands of pounds.
Really valuable tip. And we'll move on to your fourth and final strategy for 2021.
Well, again, it's HMOs. I'm not reinventing the wheel here, Vanessa. I know John Howard will be turning at on his desk, crying, saying he's done bed sits since 1918 when he was first doing bed sits. But the reality is, they still work really well if you're in the right location. And of course, it's all about the right location. There are areas that can be a bit oversaturated. It is extremely competitive in some areas at the moment. Even for us in like Reading, where you've got like some of the student HMO operators are renting to professionals. So we've seen a bit of a hit in rents by up to 10% on some of our rooms. Now, that's short term. I'm investing for the long term. I'm investing for I'm investing for at least 10 years plus. Anything less than that, as long as it makes reasonable yield, I'm happy. And losing 10% off an HMO, you've got loads of margin. If it's well run and you keep it well occupied, we're at over 90 or 95% occupancy, literally. We had a small dip down to about 90% at one point, but we've picked that right back up again now. And getting things like virtual viewings in place, all this kind of stuff, we've really evolved through COVID. As a lot of people have been forced to evolve, we've not only forced to be involved, but we're choosing to evolve and be at the forefront of our game, making sure our rooms are let and we're getting good rates for them. We're lucky enough to have our own high street letting agency in Reading, so we can service the Thames Valley, anything within an hour and a half drive, sites in that area. We're very lucky that we can service ourselves. So if agents are shutting themselves down or get people off, we're able to control our portfolio a lot better. So, I'd advocate, when you grow to a certain size, bringing on someone that does your lettings for you, maybe when it gets, economical to do so.
Yeah.
But certainly,
it's interesting, Nick, sorry to jump in, but I don't invest in HMOs, but if I was thinking of it now, I would be thinking of the impact of COVID-19, and I would be thinking about putting en suites in every bedroom to allow people to have their individual spaces for hygiene reasons. But then, of course, that kind of could lead into the ICTB individual council tax banding trap. Will you be adapting your HMOs in any way because of what's happened with COVID? Will you be going for more en-suite rooms, or are you really going to stick to your tried and tested formula?
I mean, we've always done as many en-suites as we can fit in, without compromising the room space. You don't want a pokey little room that has an ensuite. You'd rather have a decent sized room and share a bathroom with one or two other people. What I try and do is create, a handful of ensuites in the house, and maybe 2 to 3. If we're talking, let's for example say a 9-bed HMO, I would want 5 or 6 of those as ensuites. and then maybe 1 or 2 other bathrooms, or at least 1 bathroom and then maybe a separate toilet. So, the people that are sharing are only sharing with a couple of people. 3 at most would be what I'd have sharing in a bathroom. And I also like to have a bit of a mix in each house. I don't want all en suites, because then that's, in our areas, that can be anything from $550 to $650 a month. And you're at that price point, and a good ensuite should be, that kind of level in the southeast. So if you have a slightly lower rent for some of the rooms, 3 or 4 of the rooms in, let's say, a 9-bed, like $450, $500, you're tapping into a whole different market. So, each and every property, you're kind of hitting multiple markets, slight different. There's a micro market within a professional let market. No particular order, my list. But yeah, I think that's one to look out for sure. Yeah,
it's been brilliant to pick your property brain, as always, and we look forward to what the tribe has to say about it. So thank you very much for joining me, Nick, and all the best for the new year.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.